Hey guys, tonight we're venturing into a place that feels pulled straight from a fever dream, stitched together with threads of myth and sand. Picture this, a caravan dragging itself through the bruised purple twilight of the desert, the camels sighing like old men, the wheels of carts rattling over stones that crunch sharp enough to be heard even through the wind. Dust clings to your eyelashes, the kind of grit that turns the horizon into a wavering line of fire, and someone behind you mutters a prayer to keep the spirits of the wastes away. It's the perfect kind of setting for a story you probably won't survive if you actually lived it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love seeing the range of night owls and early birds. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The caravan moves with the rhythm of exhaustion. You trudge alongside, your sandals sinking into the fine sand, every step like walking on sifted flour. The guide up front swears he knows a shortcut, though you've noticed shortcuts in desert stories usually lead straight to curses or skeletons. The camels, at least, appear unimpressed, their jaws grinding as if they're chewing invisible gum. And then, out of the chatter of merchants, the squeak of wheels, and the thump of tired feet, someone whispers about a palace no one's seen in centuries, a place where the walls aren't made of brick or stone, but of emerald so polished it blinds the eye under moonlight. Of course, the desert breeds exaggeration. The great mosque of Damascus, built with marble hauled from ruins older still, was called a palace of heaven. Ancient travellers wrote about its jewelled mosaics as if they were alive. People always loved to dress their stories in impossible brilliance. Yet in this case, there's a catch. Several merchants swear that their grandfathers, or their grandfathers' grandfathers, claimed to see the Emerald Palace with their own eyes. And in a culture where oral memory stretches like camel tracks across centuries, you can't help but lean closer to catch every word. You glance at the horizon. The sun is sliding down, bleeding orange into violet, and in that dimming light, the idea doesn't feel so far-fetched. After all, historians still argue whether the Hanging Gardens of Babylon ever actually existed. Were they towering green terraces of stone, watered by ingenious pumps, or simply a poetic exaggeration written by travellers too dazzled by Mesopotamian engineering to describe it plainly? That debate proves one thing. Human memory has always been a tricky companion, and sometimes the line between a wonder of the world and a mirage is thinner than parchment. The caravan halts at dusk to pitch tents, cloth flaps in the dry wind, and you chew on dates that taste both sweet and gritty, because sand has no respect for meals. Around the fire, someone mentions an older legend tied to this emerald-walled palace. They say it was built by a silent dynasty, a line of rulers who spoke so rarely that their court functioned entirely through gestures, written signs, and music. Can you imagine? An empire run by interpretive dance and hand signals? Sounds absurd, but then again, medieval courts in Europe really did have jesters whose antics sometimes influenced decisions more than reason. Truth is always stranger than fiction if you dig deep enough. You lie awake on your mat, staring up at stars so numerous they look spilled like sugar across velvet. The desert has a way of stripping away the noise, leaving you face to face with infinity, and in that stillness, you wonder if perhaps silence could be power. Whole religions elevate quietude into divinity. Monks sitting cross-legged, mystics gazing inward. Maybe a dynasty of silence isn't so far beyond belief. You roll over, thinking you'll dream of empty banquet halls, until the wind shifts and you catch the faintest glimmer far out in the dunes. For a heartbeat, you think it's just the moon catching on grains of sand. But no, it's sharper, greener, a flicker like polished gemstone in the dark. By dawn, the caravan is buzzing. Rumours spread fast when sleep is short. A pair of traders argue over whether the glimmer was a sign of treasure or a mirage. their voices rising so loud you almost wish that silent dynasty was still around to mute them. The guide shrugs, claiming he's never seen such light before, though the twitch at his mouth says otherwise. You pack up, brush sand from your tunic, and set out again. Every step feels heavier now, as though expectation itself presses into the soles of your feet. A quirky fact surfaces as you trudge. Medieval travellers crossing deserts often carried tiny mirrors, not for vanity, but for signalling. Catch the sun just right, and you could flash a message across miles. It makes you wonder, could the glimmer last night have been nothing more than a forgotten mirror, half buried, catching moonlight? Or was it the first proof that the Emerald Palace is more than rumour? Historians still argue whether such signals were effective at night, or only during day, but the very uncertainty echoes your own doubts. The desert stretches onward like a golden sea. The sun climbs higher, punishing, relentless. You sip water that tastes faintly of leather, and the caravan seems to drag itself across the dunes like a wounded serpent. Yet in the haze, you swear you see the faint outline of the walls, smooth, shining, impossibly straight against the chaos of sand. You blink, and they vanish. Blink again, and they return. Emerald or illusion. The debate becomes moot as your feet keep carrying you forward, drawn by curiosity stronger than thirst. At night, the campfire flickers, and someone starts singing an old Bedouin tune. The melody slides over the silence like oil over water, and you find yourself lulled by its simplicity. Yet even through music, your ears strain for something else, for any hint that the desert itself might murmur back, perhaps carrying the silence of that palace into your dreams. When sleep finally catches you, it's restless. You dream of walking through halls where your voice is swallowed, where walls glimmer with green fire, and where your own reflection refuses to follow. When you wake, the horizon waits with its unbroken line. The caravan sets off again, and though no one speaks it aloud, every heart now beats with the same hunger, to find what lies beyond the dunes. You press forward into the day, your sandals dragging faint trails that the wind erases almost as quickly as you make them. The desert has no patience for human footprints. Every step feels like an argument with the sand, each grain insisting it wants to swallow you whole. The guide ahead holds his staff like a priest about to deliver bad news, and when the heat shimmers around him, he seems less like a man and more like a mirage pretending to be one. The caravan thins into a long line. The camels grunt and spit in protest, their breath steaming faintly despite the blazing sun. You've heard that camels can drink up to 40 gallons in one sitting, basically like college students at an all-you-can-drink slushy bar, but they're still not thrilled about the slog, and neither are you. Sweat beads on your brow, rolling down like the desert's version of clockwork. You're convinced the sun is playing some cruel joke, reheating you the way leftovers get microwaved too many times. The chatter starts up again. A merchant swears he saw a faint silhouette last night, a tower shimmering like a blade. Another insists it was just a trick of moonlight, nothing more than heat escaping the ground. And then an older woman with a caravan shakes her head and says, "It isn't a tower, it's a silence, the kind that steals your voice and keeps it forever." That catches your attention. A silence that swallows sound. You almost laugh it off. But the way she says it, like she's reciting something older than her bones, makes you pause. Historians still argue whether tales of silent zones in ancient deserts were metaphorical or real. Some travellers reported places where no echo ever returned, where voices simply died in the air. Was it strange geology, paranormal belief, or just sleep-deprived wanderers scaring themselves silly? Either way, her words plant themselves in your mind and grow thorns. The dunes rise higher, golden waves rolling under the blistering sky. Your throat is sandpaper. You start to see flickers in the corner of your vision, shapes that vanish when you look at them directly. Maybe shadows, maybe mirages. The desert is infamous for tricking the senses. Soldiers of Napoleon's campaign in Egypt once reported seeing entire cities shimmering in the distance, only to find nothing but endless sand. The desert, it seems, loves a good prank. By mid-afternoon, the caravan halts under a lonely acacia tree. Its branches are twisted, reaching like skeletal arms toward the sky. The shade feels like heaven, even if it only covers half your body at once. You chew stale bread that tastes vaguely like sawdust, washing it down with water too warm to be refreshing. And still, you can't shake the image of that silent palace. You ask the old woman more. She tells you that travellers used to speak of emerald walls so bright they looked alive. But if you shouted, your own voice would vanish, gone, as though stolen. And if you lingered too long, you'd forget not only your words, but your own name. You glance at your fellow travellers, some rolling their eyes, others nodding solemnly. A man mutters, "Better to lose your voice than your life." Easy to say now, you think. But you've seen how people get when legends dangle just out of reach. Greed is thirstier than the desert. The caravan moves again. The sun sinks lower, and shadows stretch long and thin across the dunes, bending like black ribbons. With the cooling air, your mind feels clearer, but the mirages grow sharper too. You swear you see a gate up ahead, just for a heartbeat. A gate carved in the shape of entwined serpents, glinting green. Then it's gone, replaced by sand, as if the desert chuckles at your gullibility. Night descends, the stars return in full, blazing with reckless brightness. Someone begins telling a story, how once a prince chased after the palace and returned mute, eyes wide with terror, his lips sealed forever. The caravan listens, half mocking, half fearful. You remember reading how some ancient Egyptian priests would sew their lips after burial rites, believing silence preserved their soul's purity. Maybe this legend is just a desert remix of that ritual, or maybe not. Sleep comes reluctantly. The sand under your mat feels harder, less forgiving tonight. Your dreams are restless again. Corridors without sound, footsteps echoing in your skull instead of the air, and a green light pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. You wake with dry lips, your tongue sticking to your teeth, and though the caravan prepares to move, you hesitate, staring out toward the horizon where the dunes ripple like an unending ocean. The guide taps his staff and warns of shifting sands. Paths move, he says. The desert decides where you walk. It's not exactly comforting. You glance down and notice how your own footprints from yesterday are gone, erased, as if you were never here at all. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your tired brain. In the Middle Ages, some maps showed entire kingdoms that never existed. Phantom islands, fake mountain ranges, even cities drawn simply because sailors claimed to have glimpsed them. Historians still argue whether those were deliberate lies to lure trade or just cartographers getting overly creative. The thought gnaws at you. What if this Emerald Palace is just the desert's version of a phantom island, real only because people insist on believing? But belief is a stubborn companion. As dawn stretches pink and gold across the dunes, you spot something again, faint, fleeting, but undeniably green. It isn't the colour of grass or moss, it's sharper, like glass catching light. And once more, you're moving, heart thumping, as though the desert itself has hooked you into its story and won't let go. The dunes rise and fall like the breath of some enormous creature. You climb one, legs trembling, lungs full of hot air that feels more like steam than wind. At the top, you pause, shading your eyes, and there it is, just for a flicker, just long enough to snag your heart. The emerald glimmer again. It sits at the horizon, sharp against the shifting sands, as though the desert accidentally left a shard of gemstone lying around. You blink, and the vision wavers, then steadies, then vanishes altogether. The caravan murmurs. You realize you're not the only one who saw it this time. The guy doesn't smile. He frowns, scratches at his beard, mutters about walls not meant for men. You've noticed that when desert guides get vague, it's never a good sign. But the whispers spread like wildfire. Even the most cynical merchant, the one who scoffed at fairy tales 2 nights ago, now leans forward on his saddle, eyes fixed on the wavering horizon. You trudge onward, the sand swallowing your feet up to the ankles, and your mind drifts to history. You recall how medieval crusaders returned from the Holy Land telling tales of cities gilded with emerald and sapphire. Historians still argue whether they exaggerated for glory or genuinely mistook coloured tiles for precious stones. Either way, the human eye loves to be dazzled, especially when exhaustion and hunger gnaw at its edges. You wonder if your Emerald Palace is just another case of tired eyes playing tricks, or something more deliberate, waiting for you. By mid-morning, the desert begins to warp again. Heat rises in waves, bending the horizon. You see water shimmering in the distance, complete with palms swaying above it. But you know better. A mirage, classic as they come. And yet, just beyond that fake oasis, the green gleam returns. Not water, not sky. Solid, unyielding, alive. You almost laugh. If this is the desert's prank, it's a good one. If it's real, then you're standing on the edge of a legend. The caravan halts. The camels snort uneasily, refusing to move forward. Animals are usually the first to notice trouble. You wipe sweat from your forehead, squinting. The light is changing. The sun no longer burns white-yellow. It bends around that distant glow, almost like the emerald is bending the light itself. You think of strange stones in history. The Koh-i-Noor diamond that seemed cursed, or the Hope diamond, which left a trail of tragedy. Gems can carry power beyond beauty, or at least people believe they do. And belief, in the desert, is more dangerous than thirst. The old woman speaks again. If you walk too close, your shadow leaves you. The others laugh nervously, but you don't. You've seen enough weirdness in the dunes already to wonder if shadows could really slip away. After all, there are fringe tales from ancient Greece about men who lost their shadows as punishment for hubris. Historians dismissed them as metaphor. But right now, metaphor feels like it might step out of the sand and bite you. The guide tries to steer the caravan away, muttering about safer routes, but curiosity is louder than caution. The merchants argue, some demanding to press on, others insisting to veer wide. The debate grows so heated that you half expect the emerald glimmer to interrupt and settle it. It doesn't. Of course, the desert doesn't care about your quarrels. You move forward anyway, legs aching but heart racing. The dunes flatten slightly, and for the first time, the glimmer doesn't vanish when you blink. It steadies into form. A line, then a wall, then towers rising like teeth. The Emerald Palace no longer hides behind mirage. It stands, unashamed, glittering in twilight's approach. The walls gleam like polished glass, green fire catching the sun's last rays. The sight steals your breath. It's as though some giant carved entire cliffs of emerald and stacked them into a fortress. You're not sure if you should kneel, laugh, or run. Even the camels fall silent, their eyes wide, as if they too recognize something beyond reason. Historians still argue whether the mythical city of Iram, the city of pillars, mentioned in the Quran, was real or not. Some claim it was swallowed by sand for its arrogance. Standing here, staring at walls that glow against the desert, you realize the Emerald Palace feels like its sibling, a ghost city proving myths sometimes outlive truth. A breeze stirs, finally breaking the heavy stillness. But it carries no sound, no rustle of fabric, no creak of saddles. The laughter and arguments of the caravan die instantly, swallowed by a silence so complete it makes your ears ache. It's not natural quiet. It's active, like the air itself is devouring noise. You open your mouth, try to hum, just to test it. Nothing. The sound curls back into your skull, like it never left your lips. The emerald walls loom closer. They pulse faintly in the dying light, as though alive. You notice carvings etched deep into their surfaces, patterns that glint like veins. Perhaps geometric, perhaps serpentine. Your skin prickles. You recall how Islamic architects covered mosques in geometric designs, not just for beauty but to mirror divine infinity. Maybe this palace borrowed from the same tradition, twisted it. Or maybe it invented something older, something no textbook records. The caravan doesn't move. Everyone is transfixed, trapped between awe and dread. You take one hesitant step forward, then another. The silence tightens like a rope. It feels less like sound is absent and more like it's being hoarded by something unseen, kept jealously. The desert sun slips behind the horizon. The palace glows brighter in the dark as if feeding on the night itself. Emerald walls shimmer, towers stretch higher, shadows dance without sound. And in that moment, you know one thing for certain. The palace is real. The silence is real. And whatever waits inside will not let you leave unchanged. The closer you walk, the more the palace reveals itself. The walls, so smooth they seem like liquid stone, rise higher than you imagined, shimmering with a green brilliance that makes the stars themselves look shy. Your feet drag across sand that suddenly feels cooler, though the desert night still presses down like a heavy blanket. It's as though the palace radiates its own strange climate, tugging at the air and bending it to its will. The caravan lingers behind you, a huddle of figures too afraid to take the final steps. Someone mutters a prayer under their breath. Someone else spits, as if to ward off the evil eye. But you, curiosity gnaws harder than fear. You keep moving until you stand before the massive gate. Two colossal doors rise from the emerald walls, their surfaces carved with intertwining serpents. Their bodies coil upward in endless spirals, eyes inlaid with a dark stone that seems to shift when you stare too long. The serpents' tongues lash outward, curling into knots that form the handles, its artistry so precise it feels alive, and you half expect one of the snakes to uncoil and strike. The guide finally catches up, his face pale. "Serpents guard treasure," he whispers, "but serpents also guard curses." He's not wrong. Ancient myths loved snakes as symbols of both wisdom and death. Think of the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, forever cycling life and destruction, or the cobra crowns of Egyptian pharaohs meant to spit fire at enemies. Serpents have always been complicated roommates in human imagination. You place your hand near the gate but hesitate. The carvings are cold, far colder than the night air should allow. The chill seeps into your skin, prickling your veins. For a fleeting moment, you swear the serpent stone eye flickers, not in reflection, but in awareness. You step back quickly, heart skipping, and laugh nervously at yourself. Except no sound comes out. Remember, the silence is absolute here. The laugh dies before it's born, swallowed whole. The old woman joins you at the gate. Her wrinkled hand traces the carved patterns with reverence. She signs something with her fingers, gestures you don't understand, but the look in her eyes tells you this palace, or at least its legend, isn't new to her. You want to ask, but words feel useless here. You can only wait, watch, and listen to the nothingness. A memory surfaces how in medieval Spain, the Alhambra's gates were carved with intricate verses of poetry, praising kings and Allah alike. Imagine a doorway that speaks not with sound but with inscription. Maybe this gate is the desert's darker cousin, a door that doesn't praise but warns, a door carved with serpents instead of words. Historians still argue whether such symbolic carvings were meant as practical warnings or just artistic flourishes. Tonight, you lean toward the warning side. You notice smaller details now, tiny cracks between the serpent coils. Not natural fractures, but deliberate. They form symbols, almost like ciphers. Could they be words? Some ancient script? You run your fingers lightly across them, half hoping for meaning, half fearing you'll accidentally trigger a curse. A ridiculous thought, maybe, but then again, the silence already feels like a spell. The caravan refuses to come closer. A merchant shouts from behind, or tries to. His mouth opens wide, his face flushes, but no sound reaches your ears. The silence has spread even to him. Panic sets in, and the group begins waving wildly, trying to decide if they should flee or stay. Their gestures look desperate, comical even, like a troupe of bad mimes. But you know the fear is real. You turn back to the gate. There's no handle in the usual sense, only the serpent's tongues forming twisted knots. The old woman looks at you, raises her eyebrows and points. Clearly, she expects you to try. You sigh, because of course you're the one who has to touch the possibly cursed snake knot. That's how these stories always go. You grip the cold stone tongue. It's slicker than it should be, like polished jade. You pull. At first, nothing happens. Then the knots loosen, serpents uncoiling slightly, and the doors groan, not with sound, but with vibration. You feel it in your bones, a deep tremor that rattles your ribs. The silence breaks not with noise, but with movement, a paradox that makes your head spin. The doors part slowly, revealing a yawning darkness within. No torchlight, no fire, no welcoming glow. Just an abyss that seems to swallow the starlight behind you, and yet you feel pulled. Not by sight, not by sound, but by something deeper. The way sailors once claimed to feel the pull of the sirens, even before they heard their songs. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your rattled brain. Ancient Babylonians believed emeralds could cure illnesses, even restore sight. Cleopatra was said to wear emeralds constantly, convinced they brought her power. Looking into this gate, framed by shimmering green walls, you wonder if emerald heals or curses, or if maybe the line between the two has always been thinner than you realized. You step across the threshold. The moment your foot touches the palace floor, the silence deepens, if that's even possible. It feels like the palace just inhaled, holding its breath. Behind you, the caravan stands frozen, unwilling to follow. You're alone now, swallowed by the emerald walls and the carved serpents that seem to smile faintly at your back. The darkness inside is not just dark. It's a weighted kind of void, as though every corner of the palace is actively hoarding the absence of sound. Your footsteps should echo, but they don't. Instead, each step lands with the muffled hush of falling snow. You try humming again, half as a joke, half to reassure yourself. Nothing. The tune loops only inside your head, mocking you like an earworm you didn't consent to. The hall you enter is vast, stretching upward farther than your eyes can trace. Pillars the colour of shadow line the walls, their surfaces too smooth to be stone, too cold to be sand. They reflect faint glimmers of green light that seem to leak from the very walls themselves. The glow isn't strong enough to banish the dark, just enough to tease it into shapes. And yet, even with this eerie half-light, the silence is the loudest thing here. You stretch out your arms and clap, just once. Nothing. Not even the faintest slap of skin against skin. The silence devours it instantly, like an impatient predator. It's the strangest sensation. Your body produces the action. Your muscles confirm it happened. But your ears betray you completely. The absence leaves you slightly dizzy, as though the room itself is gaslighting you. You think of an odd historical fact. In certain ancient Greek theatres, acoustics were so perfect that a whisper on stage could be heard by thousands. Here, you're experiencing the opposite. Architecture, engineered not to amplify sound, but to annihilate it. Historians still argue whether such silent chambers described in desert traveller accounts were real phenomena or simply exaggerations from exhausted wanderers. Standing here, you're starting to think those exaggerations were understatements. As you walk deeper, the emptiness of the hall gnaws at you. Massive arches rise overhead, each one shaped like the curve of a rib cage. You can't shake the image that you're walking inside a fossilized giant, swallowed whole and left to wander its belly forever. You try to laugh at the thought, great, I've become dinner. But once again, the laugh is yours alone, locked inside your skull. The further you go, the stranger it gets. Your ears begin to ring, not from loudness, but from the vacuum pressing in. Silence can be louder than noise if you sit in it long enough. It's why monks meditate in caves and astronauts report hearing their own heartbeats pounding in space. And here, you begin to hear yourself in ways you never wanted. The rush of blood in your veins, the crack of your joints, the faint scratch of your own eyelids when you blink. Congratulations, you're now the noisiest machine in the room. You stumble into the centre of the hall. The floor here is marked by concentric circles carved into the stone, perfect spirals, so precise they could have been laid down by a compass larger than any human hand. You trace them with your sandal and wonder if this was once a gathering place, a court, a temple, maybe both. Ancient civilizations loved dual-purpose architecture. The Parthenon, for example, wasn't just a temple but also a treasury. Perhaps this hall hosted banquets by day and rituals by night. Historians still argue whether those rituals involved sacrifice or simply chanting. Here, you suspect chanting wouldn't have worked. The silence would have eaten every word before it left the lips. Then you notice something unsettling. Shadows move across the walls. Not your shadow, those are gone, erased at the gate. These shadows belong to nothing you can see. They stretch, shrink, ripple as if cast by flames, except no torches burn. You blink, rub your eyes, but the movements continue. The silence somehow makes them worse, as though their soundlessness is proof they're not tricks. A quirky tidbit floats up, absurd in the moment. In the Middle Ages, some believed shadows were tangible objects, pieces of the soul pinned to the earth. To lose your shadow meant losing your essence. Maybe these flickering shapes are just that, fragments of something long gone, wandering the palace without a voice to announce themselves. You press on, forcing yourself not to bolt. The hall narrows into a corridor, its walls etched with geometric patterns that almost glow. Each angle seems designed to disorient, to pull your eye into endless repetition. You imagine a mathematician centuries ago labouring over these lines, muttering formulas that still baffle scholars today. Did they build this silence on purpose? Was it engineered like a weapon? Or did it simply happen, and the builders learned to embrace it? You reach the far end, where a doorway yawns open into yet another vast chamber. But before you step through, you pause. For the briefest moment, you hear something. Not much, just a single note, faint, like glass being struck far away. It lasts a heartbeat, then collapses back into the void. Your ears strain, desperate for more, but there's nothing. The silence returns with smug certainty, as if daring you to question what you just heard. You breathe deeply, chest tight. The silence presses harder now, like an unseen weight across your shoulders. You realise something terrifying. Maybe this isn't just absence. Maybe the silence is alive, watching, listening, consuming. And maybe you've already given it your first offering. You slip deeper into the palace, past the great mirrored hall, into a courtyard where silence feels so heavy it almost presses on your chest. The garden seems to have been designed by someone with a flair for mystery, or maybe a wicked sense of humour. Every tree is perfectly symmetrical, every path lined with crushed white stones that crunch softly under your sandals. But here's the unnerving part. The water in the marble fountain at the centre is still flowing, even though no one is around to tend it. You watch rivulets spill over carved lions' mouths, clear and cold, shimmering in moonlight. It's as if the palace itself insists on being alive, even without its people. You wander toward the fountain, half expecting to see your reflection, but the water's surface won't hold it. It keeps breaking into ripples before your face can settle there. Weirdly enough, you remember a quirky fact. The ancient Persians once engineered gardens called paradises, designed to mimic heaven on earth, with fountains placed at the centre to represent eternal life. Some scholars argue that the word paradise itself comes from those walled gardens, and standing here, you could almost buy into the idea that you've stumbled into one of them. The smell of jasmine drifts through the air. Not fresh-cut flowers, this is deeper, almost too sweet. Like the scent of incense burning long after the worshippers have gone. You follow it down a narrow side path, brushing against leaves that never rustle. Imagine an entire garden, but the only sound is your own footsteps. Even the night insects, which should be buzzing like tiny chainsaws, are silent. It makes you wonder, what kind of ruler would demand a garden so perfect that even nature's chatter had to be shut out? And then you see it. A cluster of stone benches arranged in a circle around the fountain, each one carved with inscriptions you can't quite read. The letters seem halfway between Arabic calligraphy and something older, almost cuneiform. Historians still argue whether hybrid scripts like this were practical experiments in blending cultures, or whether they were created for purely mystical reasons. Maybe the person who ordered these benches wanted their guests to feel like they were stepping into another world, half real, half legend. You sit down for a moment, feeling the chill of the stone seep into your skin. The quiet is too perfect, too staged. A thought creeps in. Maybe this garden was never meant for relaxation. Maybe it was designed as a test, like those old labyrinths in medieval manuscripts, where monks argued about whether walking them brought you closer to God or just gave you sore calves. Here, the fountain bubbles on, endlessly, as though mocking you with its refusal to reveal what powers it hides. A flash of something green catches your eye. At first you think it's just a plant swaying, but the still air makes that impossible. You lean forward, and for a split second you swear you see an emerald glint beneath the water. Not a reflection, an actual stone, lodged in the fountain's base. Your mind immediately jumps to the weird fact that Cleopatra once supposedly dissolved an emerald in vinegar to seduce Mark Antony. Spoiler, you can't really dissolve emeralds like that. But it does show how people have always been obsessed with gems holding magical properties. Your hand twitches with the urge to reach in, to touch it. And then, as if the garden can read your mind, the ripples smooth out, just for a moment, enough for you to see your own face reflected at last. Except it isn't just your face, it's doubled, shadowed, with another expression lurking just behind yours. The water breaks again, and it's gone. You stand quickly, heart thudding. Maybe you're tired. Maybe your imagination is overclocked from the silence. Or maybe the palace is making sure you understand that curiosity here comes with a price. You wipe your palms against your robes and take one last look at the fountain, which has returned to its careless bubbling. The silence of the garden feels heavier now, like it's waiting. Whatever game this palace is playing, you realize you're already in the middle of it, with no way to step out. The jasmine thickens in your lungs, and the emerald walls seem to lean closer, watching, approving. You take a breath and keep moving forward. You slip out of the garden through an arched doorway half swallowed by vines. The vines cling to the stone in ways that look unnatural, as if they have been carefully trained to grow in patterns, spirals, diamonds, interlocking circles. You run your fingers along them, half expecting to feel something carved beneath, and your skin brushes not just leaves but faint grooves in the wall. They're deliberate, etched lines, covered and uncovered by living green. The palace is starting to feel less like a ruin and more like an elaborate puzzle someone designed for you to stumble through centuries later. Beyond the arch is a corridor with a vaulted ceiling. Moonlight filters in from tiny star-shaped windows cut into the upper stone. The geometry is so precise it almost hurts your eyes, each angle pointing exactly where it should, each shadow landing with eerie perfection. Islamic architects in the 15th century obsessed over symmetry not just for beauty, but as a reflection of divine order. You remember reading once that for them, a building wasn't just a building, it was a way to map heaven onto earth. Standing here, you wonder if this corridor is less a passage and more a prayer, stretched into stone. The floor shifts beneath your steps, not collapsing, just tilting. At first you think you're dizzy, but then you notice the tiles. They're designed in a pattern of cubes, shaded to trick the eye into thinking they're rising or sinking. A 3D illusion from centuries before modern artists played with perspective. The longer you stare, the more the cubes seem to move, lifting and sinking like blocks in a shifting game. It's mesmerizing, and you feel your balance slide, as if your mind wants to tumble into the pattern. Somewhere above you, a bird calls, but the sound is wrong. It doesn't echo. Instead, it seems to land in your ear directly, like a whisper. It reminds you of stories about palace architects who built whispering walls, surfaces curved so that sound could travel in secret ways. A ruler at one end of a hall could hear everything a servant murmured at the other, without the servant realizing. If this place has such tricks built into it, then maybe the palace still hears you now, cataloguing every breath, every step. You pass an alcove and inside stands a statue. At least, you think it's a statue. It's carved from pale stone, draped in robes that flow almost too naturally. The face is smooth, unfinished, as though the sculptor decided not to give it features or didn't dare. You circle it, and the robe folds seem to shift, as if they're rippling in a wind you can't feel. Historians often note that statues in Islamic palaces were rare, since many traditions discouraged depicting human figures. But sometimes, anonymous forms like this slipped through, half man, half shadow, an outline of presence without identity. You find yourself leaning closer, staring into that blank face when you hear it, a sigh, not from your throat, but from the stone itself. You stumble back, pulse hammering, but the statue is still silent again, blank-faced. Maybe it was the air moving through the corridor, or maybe it wasn't. Shaking it off, you continue down the hallway until you reach a door. This one is small, almost plain compared to the rest, but its wood is polished, gleaming in the low light. You push it open and step inside. The room beyond is vast, shocking after such a narrow hall. It's a library, though not like any you've seen. Shelves climb up walls that stretch impossibly high, filled not just with books but scrolls, tablets, bundles of parchment tied with red string. Dust swirls through beams of silver moonlight, yet the air doesn't smell stale. Instead, it smells faintly of ink and cedar, like someone has only just stepped away from their work. You approach the nearest shelf. The spines aren't marked in languages you recognize. Some glow faintly, as though letters were written in phosphorescent paint. You pull one volume free. It's heavy, bound in leather so dark it almost looks wet. When you open it, the pages don't hold words, but diagrams, intricate machines that look both ancient and futuristic. Spirals of wheels, levers, mirrors, all annotated in a script that seems to flicker between Arabic, Latin, and something unplaceable. You think of the real history here. Andalusian Spain was a crossroads of knowledge, where scholars translated texts from Greek to Arabic to Latin, preserving ideas that Europe might have lost forever. Some say entire scientific revolutions were born out of those translation houses. Could this library be a remnant of that tradition, or has it drifted into something else? storing books not meant for human eyes. You close the book quickly and slide it back. Your fingers tremble, not from fear exactly, but from that strange, electric thrill of knowing you've brushed against something forbidden. The silence of the library presses close, deeper than the garden, heavier than the halls. Somewhere in the stacks, you hear a soft sound, not footsteps, not breathing, just the faint shuffle of a page turning. You freeze. The air is still, the moonlight is steady, and yet the book that you just returned is no longer glowing. Another one on the next shelf is. It's as if the library is choosing what you see. You wander deeper into the silent palace. Its halls a labyrinth of marble corridors and hanging tapestries woven with gold thread. The air has grown heavier here, filled with the faint scent of sandalwood, and something else you can't quite place, something sharper, almost metallic. Your footsteps echo louder than they should, as though unseen ears are listening to every move. And then you come upon a chamber unlike any before it, a grand hall lined with bronze statues, each one depicting a different figure frozen mid-gesture. Some stand tall and noble, others crouch with shields, and a few kneel as if begging. Their expressions are unnervingly lifelike, the kind of detail that makes you wonder if they were sculpted from memory, or transformed into metal by some sorcery that you don't particularly want to test yourself. The torches lining the walls flicker low, their flames wavering as though hesitant to illuminate what lies here. You catch sight of inscriptions carved into the pedestals beneath each statue. They're written in a mix of Persian, Arabic, and even Greek, languages that shouldn't exist side by side. Yet here they coexist in this eerie hall. You lean closer, recognizing one name, Alexander the Great. Apparently, the conqueror himself once brushed against this palace in whispered legend, though historians still argue whether his so-called Eastern campaigns ever stretched far enough to place him in a land of emerald walls. A strange hum vibrates in your ears. It isn't sound exactly, but rather a trembling that seems to come from within your bones. When you glance at the statues again, you swear one has shifted slightly, its bronze fingers no longer curled in quite the same way. Logical part of your mind says it's just shadow play. Less logical part says, nope, these bad boys are alive, and you definitely don't want to be on the wrong end of a living bronze soldier. The deeper you go, the more unsettling it becomes. There's one statue of a woman draped in flowing robes, her bronze eyes hollow yet piercing. A plaque beneath her calls her the Queen who spoke no lies. She carries a scroll, and even though you know it's metal, your brain insists she might unroll it any second. Another statue depicts a scholar clutching a celestial sphere, stars and planets etched across its surface. Historians love to point out how Islamic astronomers preserved and expanded Greek knowledge of the cosmos while Europe was still floundering in the so-called Dark Ages. Yet here, this figure feels less like a symbol of progress and more like a warning. Knowledge can turn heavy, unmovable, like bronze when left unchallenged. You run your hand along the cool surface of one statue's arm, only to pull back when the hum grows louder. Maybe don't touch. Genius. Your nerves rattle, and then, like a badly timed horror movie jump scare, a shadow slips across the far wall. You whip around, nothing, but you're not alone, at least, not entirely. There's an alcove in the hall, and within it rests a smaller figure. This one crafted not from bronze, but from black obsidian. Its surface swallows torchlight, reflecting only faint glimmers. The statue shows a hooded figure holding a set of scales. The inscription reads, "Balance must be paid." Cute. Just what you needed. A reminder that even ancient magical courts had IRS vibes. You half expect it to start rattling off overdue tax penalties. And then, movement again. This time, undeniable. One bronze soldier's eyes glint brighter, as if molten light burns behind them. A groan of metal fills the chamber, long and aching. You freeze. The statue shifts, shoulders grinding against the weight of centuries. It doesn't step forward, yet, but the whole hall suddenly feels alive, like an army waiting for its command. The hum grows unbearable, resonating in your skull. You stumble back, trying to steady your breath. Maybe if you avoid direct eye contact, they'll let you pass. Because eye contact is always the trigger, right? You edge along the wall, hugging the shadows, trying to slip toward the far door. Your mind tosses out a random fact to distract you. In medieval Baghdad, bronze automata, mechanical servants powered by water pressure, were built to serve caliphs. Historians still debate whether such inventions ever reached the level of complexity described in manuscripts. But here, in this surreal palace, it seems less like fiction, and more like a prototype army that never powered down. The statues groan again, but this time you notice something. Their faces remain eerily calm, almost serene. They don't threaten, they just wait. And maybe that's worse. Maybe they're guardians, biding time until the palace decides if you're worthy of passing deeper in. The door at the end of the hall glimmers faintly with the emerald veins, promising escape but also greater mystery. You take a shaky breath and step forward. The hum doesn't fade, but it shifts tone, higher now, almost like a chant. You can't understand the words, but you feel the meaning in your chest. Pass, if you dare. The door opens before you without touch, swinging wide to reveal another chamber cloaked in shadows. You glance back once. Every statue stands exactly as it did before, as if nothing ever happened. Cool. Totally fine. You're definitely not going to dream about those faces tonight. You step into the darkness beyond. You're running out of air. Not literally. Don't panic. But the palace seems designed to make you feel as though every corridor is slightly too narrow, every ceiling slightly too low, every shadow stretching just a bit longer than it should. You step forward, one slow pace at a time, aware of the strange buzzing in the walls. At first, you think it's your imagination, maybe a ringing in your ears from fatigue. But then the hum steadies into rhythm, like thousands of tiny wings beating in sequence. You press your palm against the emerald bricks, and the vibration is undeniable. The palace itself is alive. That's not as wild as it sounds. After all, some ancient architects believed buildings could breathe. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats were thought to channel divine energy, almost like the bricks themselves were humming prayers. Here, you have no priest, no sacrificial altar, only walls that purr like a giant cat who has been waiting far too long for company. The buzzing swells as you enter a new chamber. This one is shaped like a dome, hollow as a bell, emerald tiles glinting with faint bioluminescence. A lattice of cracks runs across the ceiling, almost like veins, pulsing faint light as if blood or some shimmering energy flows within. You remember the story of Islamic scholars who debated whether the earth itself might have a pulse, a literal heartbeat that tied together land, sky, and ocean. Historians still argue whether these writings were allegory or genuine early geophysical speculation. But standing here, listening to the pulse, you're not inclined to dismiss the idea. The sound is almost hypnotic. You close your eyes, and it seems the hum is forming words, though you can't catch them, like listening to gossip behind a door, just on the edge of understanding. And here's a thought that doesn't help you relax. What if the palace isn't merely alive, but aware? You shift uneasily, remembering the quirky tidbit about ancient Egypt. Some temples were built with hidden tubes and chambers that could whistle when the wind passed through, making people think the gods were speaking. Clever engineering, sure, but also a reminder that humans love tricking themselves with sound. Could this hum just be clever acoustics? Or are you genuinely standing inside something that's breathing, whispering, waiting? The dome chamber proves to be more interactive than you'd like. As you step into the centre, the floor vibrates with stronger intensity. Rings of emerald bricks glow one by one, spiralling outward from your feet. For a moment you look like the epicentre of an earthquake. Except no shaking, only resonance. Like you've become a tuning fork inside a cosmic instrument. Your bones hum, your teeth rattle in your skull. If anyone were here to watch, you'd probably look ridiculous, like a person trying very hard not to dance at a wedding, while the DJ refuses to stop playing YMCA. But instead of bad disco, the sound here builds towards something deeper, darker. It is low, resonant, endless. And then you notice it. Your shadow is separated from you. It begins as a blur on the floor, then sharpens. Your own outline, but stretched, bending slightly toward the wall. It tilts its head. Though you didn't, it raises its hand. Though yours stays stiff at your sides. There's a reason people used to believe shadows were a soul tethered to the body. Plato suggested they were illusions of forms, but in many folk traditions, losing your shadow was losing yourself, and you, right now, are watching yours rebel. The buzzing softens into almost speech. The shadow tilts its head again, as though listening, and then, faster than you can react, it slides up the wall. One long smear of black, curling like smoke, disappearing into the emerald cracks of the ceiling. Gone. You stand frozen, the hum quiets, as though satisfied. Historians still argue whether ancient architecture was meant as more than shelter, whether palaces, pyramids, and cathedrals were designed to manipulate the senses, creating awe or terror that felt supernatural. If so, this palace is winning. Because your heart is racing, then your shadow is gone. You don't even know if that means you're lighter now, or far more vulnerable. You move forward more cautiously now, uncertain whether you're still entirely yourself. It's hard to shake the feeling that without your shadow, you've lost an anchor. You glance down at the floor every few steps, half expecting the dark silhouette to reappear and mock you. Instead, there's only your body, bright against the emerald stones, as if the palace is deliberately refusing to give you back your reflection. In folklore, that was never a good sign. In parts of Eastern Europe, it was said that witches could steal a person's shadow to control their fate. In some Inuit stories, a wandering spirit could disguise itself by wearing the shadow of another, and in Peter Schlemihl's odd German tale, the poor man who sold his shadow for wealth ended up shunned by society. You think about those stories now, wondering whether you've just been purchased, or perhaps claimed. The next chamber opens with little fanfare. It's rectangular, lined with emerald tiles so polished they shimmer like water. At the centre lies something you didn't expect. A garden, not a metaphorical one, not carvings or frescoes, but a literal garden, underground, sealed in this palace where no sunlight should reach. Plants with silver leaves spiral upward, faintly glowing. Mushrooms shaped like lanterns dangle from twisted stems. The air smells sweet, almost narcotic, like jasmine mixed with iron. You remember reading that ancient Babylon had its famous hanging gardens, one of the 7 wonders, though historians still debate whether they truly existed or were just a romantic invention. Some even argue the gardens were never in Babylon at all, but in Nineveh. But here, standing before you, is no debate. This garden is very real, impossibly thriving in the palace's emerald glow. As you step closer, the plants react. Leaves quiver toward you, curling ever so slightly. The mushrooms flicker brighter, as if acknowledging your presence. It would be comforting if it weren't so unsettling. You've read enough about heliotropism, plants bending toward the sun, but here there is no sun, only you. And then the vines begin to move. Slowly, like waking animals, they uncoil from the garden floor. One curls around your ankle, not tight, Not hostile, but testing. Another brushes your arm with a feather-light touch. For an absurd moment you think of time-lapse videos of ivy creeping up a wall, except this is no fast-forward illusion. This is happening now, to you, and the pace is deliberate. It's strange. You don't feel attacked. You feel studied, as though the garden is reading you the way a scholar reads a manuscript. And perhaps it is. After all, some scientists argue plants can communicate chemically, even electrically. The Wood Wide Web theory suggests forests share resources and warnings through root systems. If that's true, then maybe this subterranean garden is more than decoration. Maybe it's a nervous system. Maybe the palace is learning who you are. You whisper something, just a word, your own name. The vines freeze, then twitch, as though the sound startled them. A beat later, the glowing mushrooms brighten in rhythm with your voice. The chamber itself seems to sigh, and then, just as quickly, the vines release you. The garden stills, though the air remains thick with scent. You're left standing alone, though not untouched. On your wrist, where the vine brushed you, is a faint green stain, almost like ink. You rub at it, but it doesn't fade. Instead, it glows faintly in response to your touch, a mark you didn't ask for. You think about symbols, the way ancient civilizations love to brand chosen ones, whether through tattoos, scarification, or talismans. In Norse myth, Odin marked himself by sacrifice for wisdom. In countless initiation rituals, the body bore proof of passage. Maybe this green sigil is your proof that the palace has acknowledged you. But is that an invitation or a warning? The answer doesn't come. Instead, the air shifts, the vines retract, the mushrooms dim, the garden folds in on itself, like an animal curling back to sleep. You take one last glance at the glowing stain on your skin, then step toward the far archway. Somewhere behind you, you think you hear the faint whisper of your missing shadow, as though it is waiting on the other side. The new chamber greets you with silence. Absolute silence. The kind that presses against your ears until you swear you can hear your own bloodstream. No hum of the garden behind you, no whispers of a missing shadow, only stillness. The room is round, unlike the garden's rectangle, with walls of emerald so dark they appear almost black. At the centre stands a single object, a mirror. You hesitate. Of course it would be a mirror. How could a place obsessed with shadows and doubles not conjure one? But this is no ordinary piece of glass. It's tall, stretching nearly to the dome ceiling, framed in silver that looks tarnished yet alive, like it could ripple if you touched it. The surface of the mirror doesn't shine. It absorbs. It looks less like glass and more like a deep pool of black water held vertically, waiting. You step closer. When you finally peer in, you don't see yourself. Not exactly. The figure reflected back at you is slower. Its movements lag by a fraction of a second, as though you're watching a badly synced film reel. Raise your hand, and the reflection hesitates before obeying. Tilt your head, and the mirror version tilts just a little further, exaggerating the motion. The delay is unnerving, but what happens next is worse. When you lower your hand, the reflection doesn't. Its arm remains raised, hovering in the air, fingers trembling as if trapped. You freeze. Slowly, cautiously, you lift your hand again. This time the reflection smiles, though you didn't. And there it is, the moment you knew was coming, the doppelganger. Humanity has always feared doubles. In Egyptian mythology, a person's ka was a spiritual double, sometimes a guardian, sometimes a parasite. In Norse legend, seeing your own Varduga meant impending death. German folklore gave it a name we still use today, the doppelganger. Some tales insist that encountering your double means illness, or madness, or doom. Others claim it's simply your soul, wandering free. But this one, standing across from you, feels more than symbolic. It feels hungry. You take a step back. The reflection doesn't. It stays close to the mirror's edge, pressing forward as if eager to slip through. Its lips move, though you hear nothing. You think you can almost read the words. Let me out. Your mind flashes to experiments with perception, the way the brain can trick itself when staring too long into a mirror in a dimly lit room. Psychologists call it the strange face illusion. Features distort, identities blur, and people report seeing monsters, strangers, even the dead. But this doesn't feel like illusion. This feels like invitation. You force yourself to whisper, no. For the first time, the reflection freezes, its smile falters, its eyes, your eyes, narrow. Then, without warning, the surface of the mirror ripples, not an illusion this time, but liquid, moving like disturbed water. A hand pushes forward, not yours, its. You stumble back, but the mirror holds. The hand presses against the glass, palm flat, as if testing the barrier. You notice something. Its skin is darker, lined with veins that glow faintly green, like the stain now circling your wrist, as though the garden's mark has grown inside it instead of you. It knocks once, soundless, but you feel the vibration in your bones. And then, abruptly, it stops. The figure lowers its hand. The surface of the mirror hardens back into unbroken black. Your reflection stands there again. Normal now, copying you perfectly. A trick of the mind. Perhaps. But no. On the inside of the mirror, just faintly visible, is a handprint, green as acid, pressed against the other side of the glass. You back away until your shoulders meet the wall. The silence hasn't broken. Not a whisper, not a crack of sound. Only the echo of your pulse hammering in your skull. When you finally gather the nerve to move, you don't look back. You step through the arch on the far side of the chamber, leaving the mirror and the double trapped behind you. Still, you can't help but wonder if you've left it, or if it's already following you, somewhere in the halls you haven't yet reached. The corridor beyond the mirror chamber is narrower than before, forcing your shoulders to brush the cold stone as you walk. The air is thicker here, metallic, as if you've stepped inside the lungs of the earth itself. Each inhale tastes of rust. Each exhale feels stolen. A faint light pulses ahead, steady as a heartbeat. You follow it. The passage opens into a cavernous space, and for a moment, you forget to breathe. This is no ordinary hall. It is a library, not of books, but of shadows. Tall shelves rise on either side, yet they hold no parchment, no scrolls. Instead, pinned against the wood like insects in glass cases are silhouettes, flattened, writhing shapes that flicker as though alive. Some stretch and pull, clawing at their invisible bindings. Others hang limp, like pressed flowers long since dried. You realize with a chill that these are not drawings. They are shadows stripped from their owners and archived. You walk slowly, unwilling to disturb whatever rules govern this place. The green mark on your wrist throbs once, and several of the captured shadows twitch in answer, like they recognize you. Or worse, like they're calling. At the far end of the hall stands a lectern carved from obsidian. Upon it rests a single object, a book. Unlike the shelves, this one is physical. Its cover is bound in leather so black it swallows the light. No title, no markings, only a lock of tarnished brass, already undone, as though someone or something expected you. You hesitate before opening it, but curiosity outweighs fear. Inside, the pages are blank, all except the first. Written there in ink, the same green as your spreading mark, are words that make your throat tighten. This record belongs to you. You stare. Below the phrase, lines of text crawl into existence even as you watch. Writing themselves like an invisible hand guides the pen. It is your name that appears first, then your birth, then moments from your life, mundane and sacred, both, the first lie you ever told, the first hand you ever held, the first night you dreamed of being lost. The pages turn themselves, filling faster and faster until you glimpse the present moment described in uncanny detail. And here you stand, reading these words, the mark upon your wrist burning brighter. You drop the book, but it doesn't fall. It clings to the lectern, bound to its place. The words keep writing faster now, rushing toward something unseen. You don't want to know what it records next. You slam the cover shut. The silence of the hall shatters. The shadows pinned to the shelves writhe violently, tearing at their anchors, their forms stretching thin as parchment. Some whisper in languages you almost recognize. Others scream without sound, mouths opening wider than faces should allow. A wind rises, not from outside, but from inside the book, pushing against the air, pulling at your clothes, tugging at your skin as though it means to tear the shadow from you too. Desperation takes hold. You press the book down with both hands, forcing it shut, whispering nonsense like a prayer, slowly, reluctantly. The wind fades. The shadows slacken back against their shelves. The silence returns, though less complete than before, broken, restless, watchful. The mark on your wrist has grown darker, tendrils curling up your arm like ivy. You know now what it wants. It isn't simply a stain, it is a tether, tying you to this archive, this garden of doubles and lost reflections. And yet, when you lift your eyes, you see a new door waiting in the wall beyond the lectern. It wasn't there when you entered. The book has shown you what it wished. Now it offers you a path forward. You linger a moment longer in the hall of stolen shadows, heart unsteady, before stepping toward the door. Behind you, though you refuse to look, you hear the softest sound. Not a whisper this time. A laugh. Your laugh. Coming from one of the pinned silhouettes that should not know your voice. The new door opens without resistance, its surface smooth as bone beneath your palm. It swings wide into a stairwell that spirals downward, torchless and dim, the only illumination coming from the faint green sheen pulsing from your marked wrist. The steps are narrow, carved from stone that glistens with condensation. Every footfall echoes, chasing itself downward like the laughter of something unseen. The descent feels endless. You count your steps, 50, 100, 200, until numbers lose meaning. The air grows colder. At times, you think you hear footsteps following just above you, perfectly matched to your own. Once, when you stop abruptly, the echo continues a beat too long, as if someone or something failed to stop in time. Finally, the spiral releases you into a vast underground hall. Unlike the rooms before, this place is not built of stone but of living root and earth. The ceiling arches high, formed of tangled roots thicker than pillars, dripping with sap that glows faintly, casting the chamber in amber light. The floor is soft with soil. It smells of damp forests, of decay and growth, of something old remembering its first breath. At the chamber's centre lies a pool, not water, not entirely. Its surface ripples like quicksilver, reflective but deep, swallowing light rather than mirroring it. You approach cautiously, drawn by a rhythm that hums from its depths, slow, steady, the sound of a heart far larger than yours. The mark on your wrist flares, the tendrils now snake to your elbow, each pulse synced with the pool's throb. You kneel beside it, and for a moment you glimpse your reflection, not the fractured double from the mirror chamber, not the pinned shadow from the archive. This reflection looks real. Your face as it is, weary but whole. You lean closer, craving the comfort of seeing yourself unchanged. Then it smiles. Your own face in the pool smiles when you do not. The soil trembles underfoot. The roots above creak, tightening like muscles around bone. The pool churns, and your reflection begins to climb upward, its arms stretching through the surface as though the liquid were only a veil. The sight is unbearable, your own hands slick and glistening, clawing their way into your world. Instinct drives you backward, yet the pool holds you fast in its pull. You stagger, your heels sinking into soft earth. The reflection's torso emerges, ribs glimmering through translucent skin, its smile too wide, its eyes too calm. "Give it to me," it whispers, though no mouth moves. The words arrive inside your head, carved there with an icy blade. You don't need to ask what it means. The mark, the tether, the green ivy coiling your arm. It belongs to this thing. This not you. For a moment, you almost surrender. To let it take the mark, take whatever fate it promises, might mean release from the labyrinth of voices and shadows. But as you hesitate, you remember the laugh in the archive, the way it imitated you, the hunger beneath it. To give this reflection what it seeks would not free you. It would erase you. The pool surges, and the double lunges, dragging itself almost entirely into the chamber. You throw yourself sideways, rolling across the damp soil, scrambling to your feet. The creature, half-born, collapses onto the floor, its form shuddering, unstable, as though it hasn't yet decided how perfectly it should resemble you. The roots above tighten further, their sap dripping faster, forming a circle around you both, a trial, you realize, or perhaps an execution. The mark burns hotter than ever, your veins alive with green fire. The creature staggers toward you, your face dripping from its skull like melting wax, only to reform in grotesque precision. It whispers again, louder now, "Give it to me." Your chest aches as though your own heart is caught in its fist. The tether between you vibrates, stretching, threatening to snap or fuse forever. There is no door here, no hidden passage waiting to save you. Only the pool, the roots, the soil, and your other self demanding what it believes is its due. And the terrible knowledge that soon one of you will not remain. The chamber breathes with you. Each inhale feels stolen, each exhale a surrender. The reflection, your double, rises fully from the pool now, dripping with the quicksilver liquid that birthed it. It stands taller than you, leaner, skin shimmering as though woven from the pool's surface. And yet the face is yours, smiling too easily, eyes too still. The roots above bend lower, weaving a cage around the two of you. Their sap drips steadily, like seconds in a clock that will not wait. The soil beneath your feet churns, as if some deeper thing stirs impatiently, demanding resolution. The double's voice fills your head again, louder, more insistent. "Give it to me. You were never meant to keep it. You are only the vessel." Your wrist sears, the mark flaring until your vision blurs green. The tendrils spiral further, crawling to your shoulder, your neck. The pain is unbearable, yet with it comes a clarity. The labyrinth was never random. Each chamber, each shadow, each voice has been appealing away of you. And now, at the end, only one will carry what the labyrinth once guarded. The double lunges. Its hand, your hand, grips your throat. You feel the strength of your own bones turned against you. Its touch burns cold, as though it carries the void of the pool still dripping from its skin. You choke, vision fading. Instinct drives you to act. You raise your marked arm, pressing it against the creature's chest. The ivy-like lines flare brighter than they ever have, flooding the chamber with green light. The double convulses, its features glitching, flickering between your face and something formless. You hear yourself scream, but not from your mouth, from its... The tether shudders violently, a cord of green fire stretching between your hearts. You realize then, you cannot destroy it. You can only choose, merge with it, surrendering your selfhood, or sever the tether entirely. knowing the cost will be more than you can name. The chamber waits, the roots creak, the pool ripples hungrily. You make your choice. The world splits. For a heartbeat, you are two, yourself and the reflection, threads of thought and memory unravelling and rejoining, pain blooming brighter than light. Then silence. When your senses return, you're kneeling alone by the pool. The roots have loosened, the cage gone. The soil is still, the air quiet. Your wrist is bare. The mark has vanished. But you cannot shake the sense that something is missing. A thought half remembered, a memory you can't quite hold. You feel lighter, but also incomplete, as though part of you has been left behind, still whispering from beneath the silver surface. The pool lies calm again, only your reflection looks back at you. This time it does not smile. You rise, trembling, and the roots above shift to reveal an archway you hadn't seen before. A way forward, or a way out. You do not know. You step through anyway. The labyrinth exhales, satisfied, and you do not know whether you are the one who walked in or the one who crawled free.